Welcome back, all you real estate professionals, entrepreneurs, investors, contractors, home builders, and anyone else that's bumped into this channel. Come on, let's talk about a very interesting topic. And we can't diagnose. We're done with the first quarter of 2022. What's going to happen with the housing market? All right. Before we get into all that, just do me a favor. If you haven't already and have just bumped into this channel, find that subscribe button. Would love it if you think I did a good job. Hit the thumbs up on the way out. Leave your comments below. If you got questions, drop those below as well. I really appreciate all of that stuff. I get to them as much as I can, fast as I can. So be patient with me. If I don't answer right away, you know what to do. Just take a deep breath and wait. Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram. You can DM there for any questions, comments you have as well. And without further ado, let's get into this. So what is Case Shiller and what can it tell us about the upcoming housing correction that I'm starting to see, and what 2008 can show us data on to kind of take that Case Shiller Index into account and see if we can't maybe get a forecast of what's going down in the next 12 to 18 months in the housing market. What is Case Shiller and the housing index that is used? Okay. So really, the Case Shiller Index is basically an economic forecast to help understand movements in the real estate market as far as price. It was developed by three dudes in the 80s originally. Their names are Alan Weiss, Carl Case, and Robert Shiller. Later, these guys got together and formed a company that would actually research tracking housing prices in and throughout the U.S. I will say that although three of these guys are labeled as economists, Alan Weiss was not an economist. He was actually a computer science and physics dude. How he got wrapped in economics, I really don't understand. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The guy was a smart guy. He's a smart guy. Carl Case actually is no longer with us, unfortunately, but he was a professor in economics for 30 plus years. So these guys, as I said, put together a company that would actually track research in housing price movement throughout the U.S. Eventually, Fiserv actually bought that company from them, and it actually tabulates the data behind the index that's actually distributed to the Standards and Poor's. So you can see, you know, my opinion on this. If you don't, I'm not going to get into it right now as far as some of these rating agencies go. But this is one tool we can use to start tracking what is going on in the housing market itself and the real estate across the country. Okay. So that's the kind of the background of the Case Shiller Index. Again, it's basically made up of several kind of indices, shall we say, plural of index, tracking changes in the value of residential housing markets. And it tracks the purchase price and resale of the value of single family homes. Okay. There's basically, if I remember correctly, 9 major census divisions in the US. It covers all 9 of those. I think most of this is derived from a 10 city and 20 city composite index. And there's also like an individual metro area indexes for all the cities that they use in those composite indexes. Those include Boston, Chicago, Denver, Vegas, Los Angeles. I'm just looking at the list here: Miami, New York, San Diego, San Francisco, DC, plus Atlanta, Charlotte, Cleveland, Dallas, Detroit, Minneapolis, Phoenix, Portland, Seattle, and Tampa. Okay, those are the major ones. So of all these indexes, and then, moving aside from the national indexes, calculated quarterly and then published, I believe, the last Tuesday of February, May, August, November. And then the last Tuesday of each month it's like 7 o'clock my time. So 9 a.m. Eastern. It's a 2-month data lag time. So understand there is some data lag within this actual index. So as we get into the first quarter of 2022 and we take a look at some of the data in the Case Shiller, understand there's a little bit of a lag there. And that's kind of a good barometer for understanding if we're already seeing some movement down, then if we're behind the curve or behind the 8 ball, so to speak, on some of that information, we're going to see more momentum or more volatility pick up within those movements down or up based on this Case Shiller Index. All right. What it does and doesn't track. So for the most part, types of sales that are tracked by Case Shiller indexes are arm's length sales transactions. Those are transactions where the home was sold at market value, and the sale price data can be used to get an accurate kind of, view snapshot of the housing market. Transactions where a mother sold like her home to a son for a favorable below market price are not included. So selling to your buddy on a hookup for a flip or something, they keep track of that stuff. It's at arm's length, like I said. So none of that homie hookup stuff is going to be included in here. And yes, you can actually figure that out. Trust me. Foreclosure sales are included in the indexes, which I think is a misnomer in some ways. Some people think that that's not in there. They do include foreclosures in the Case Shiller Index. Keep that in mind, because it does have a basic kind of parameter for what's happening, and that can affect drastically this index as a whole based on the formula. Sales, let's see. So like sales between a bank and an individual are considered arm's length and a repeat sale. So that's why foreclosures are included in this. Condos and co-ops are not included in any of these major indexes. However, separate condo indexes that track condo prices in like the 5 major markets of Boston, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago are in. All right. Now that we've kind of had an understanding of what the index is, let's pull this puppy up and let's get into kind of the breakdown of what's happening. So, based on information from this index, we've got home prices showing that they went up 19.8% year over year in August. And again, remember, there's a 2-month lag here. So I'm kind of pulling it back. We're down, like I said, in the first quarter 2022. So after July's 19.7% annual increase, according to S&P CoreLogic, Case Shiller, the leveling off has come from basically what they were saying of 4 straight months of record-setting increasing growth. That's nationwide on average. And there's mean numbers that are put in there, meaning in the middle. There's averages as well. There was a quote based on this article that I'm pulling all this Case Shiller information on that read, August data also suggests that the growth in housing prices, while still very strong, may be beginning to decelerate. This is another guy. Again, this information now that visitors using it is now basically piggybacking on the S&P. Remember, Standard & Poor's is a rating agency for stock market information, mortgage information as well. And these guys do get paid by these markets and by especially market makers to rate things. Okay. So they're being paid to kind of, now I'm not going to say fluff information, but one way or the other, maybe to direct sentiment at times. That's my tinfoil, but just keep in mind, they are paid to rate things. So again, what this report was saying is buyers should be wary. Robert Shiller wrote in the Project Syndicate on Monday, purchasing in booming locations may not be a safe long-term bet, is what Shiller said. So even at currently elevated U.S. home price levels, buying still makes sense for those who are set on ownership. But buyers need to be sure that they can accept what could be a rather bumpy and disappointing long-term path for home values. He's saying here is that if you're buying real estate right now as a long-term position for you to live in, and you're planning on being there for a good chunk of time, probably 10 years plus, that's not a bad time to buy still. Now we've got interest rates moving up and they're going to start kind of gaining steam on their way up. I'm actually looking at maybe a 6% to 8% interest rate by the end of the year. That's my forecast. I've heard some numbers that are even higher than that. I know that may blow people's minds thinking about that number right now, and no, that is not a record number. Trust me, if you guys are older than I am, even, you'll know that in the 70s and 80s, interest rates were 15%. Okay. And yes, things do fluctuate. I'm not going to get into the basic economics of why there's going to be interest rate rises coming in just in 2022, let alone 2023. But understand rates are going up. They're going to continue to move up. That can create some pullback in the market as a whole for buyers, especially primary homeowners. But again, Shiller's saying if you're going to be there a while, like everything, real estate recovers over time. It is a cyclical monster, just like anything else. But if you're thinking about buying in these hot markets right now, is what he's saying, just be wary. You could buy at a hot market and you buy at the very top, and it may take some time for it to recover for you actually to gain equity in your home if you're living there. Same thing with investment properties. You got to be wary as an investor. So you real estate entrepreneurs, investors out there, keep this stuff in mind. Okay. The bursting of the housing bubble that triggered the Great Recession, this is in 2008, saw national home prices fall 36% from December 2005 to February 2012. Okay. They have since risen 71% from February 2012. Think about that. But that isn't the only example of declining home values. Shiller cited data that show that U.S. home prices adjusted for inflation were often lower in the 1990s than they were a century ago. The drop came as cities spread out to cheaper and cheaper land and home building technology improved. Now, me as a general contractor and home builder, yes, technology has improved substantially over time, okay? Making a lot of my job easier, faster, and in some ways less expensive. But then we have to deal with rising energy codes that are continuing to change and evolve that on some level I don't agree with. And I'm not a not for energy efficiency guy. Trust me, I am. I'm an environmental guy, but at the same time, some of this stuff is actually going to be less efficient and more costly than building homes. And again, if we're still paying up the wazoo for lots, and our home building cost is still not moving much. Thank you, inflation. Thank you, a lot of factors. There's not much we can do as far as cost, except for find alternative ways to build homes. Stay tuned for our shipping container builds. That's not a plug, or maybe it is. But understand that some of that stuff actually, technology-wise, isn't helping the cost to build come down, okay? So although that was said as far as home building technology has improved, some of that stuff actually counterbalanced and moved home prices back up. All right, so for buyers and sellers focused on today, the August pause in price growth acceleration was similar across two other Case Shiller indices, the 10-city composite, which we talked about earlier, which rose by 18.6%, and the 20-city composite, which rose by 19.7%. Both figures were less than their July gains. Okay, so a month earlier, right? And again, remember, we have a 2-month lag, but this is all going to fall into place here in a second. Experts credit the market's rise in part to home buyers' response to the coronavirus pandemic as they migrated from urban apartments to further out homes, being that they didn't have to drive into work every day. They were working from home. People could start to choose more. There was more flexibility, at least, on where they were living. So getting out of the city is less expensive in most parts of the country. More data is needed to determine if the demand surge is attributable to households advancing from their home buying plans, causing purchases to bunch up, or to changes in location preferences, which I was just talking about. Phoenix and San Diego saw the highest year-over-year gains in home prices in August, this is of last year, increasing by 33% and 26.2% respectively. Tampa replaced Seattle at number 3, with prices increasing by 25.9%. Price growth was strongest in the Southwest, though every region across the country saw double-digit gains. All right, so Case Shiller's national index is 45.5% higher than the previous peak in July 06. Remember, from that time in 05 to 2012, what happened to home prices? Only 8 of the cities in the 20-city index reported higher year-over-year price increases in August than in July. Okay, what the heck does this all mean, Shane? What are we talking about right here? All right, spectacles off. So here's the deal. 2008 happened for a reason, okay? There's certainly some information out there that I've even researched for a long time now showing that it was intentional, but either way, the housing crash and the housing bubble of 2008 happened based on plays within securities and derivatives in the mortgage-backed security and collateral debt obligations markets, all right? The potential housing bubble of today has nothing to do with those items. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of that that's going to come up if it's not going to actually cause, if it's going to, a correction or a crash. I personally don't see a crash happening in real estate. I do see a correction. And a couple things that I've talked about before can relate back to some of the information as I watch some of this Case Shiller indices kind of keep pumping out information. Some of the stuff that I'm seeing is created from all kinds of different factors globally, not just in this country alone, that are going to cause things to start correcting. The law of diminishing returns. Okay, so the law of diminishing returns is when there's a point where people cannot afford some sort of item, whether it be trivets or homes, at a certain price, they stop buying, period. It doesn't matter if they want it or not. It doesn't matter if they even need it or not. They find an alternative. Food, clothing, housing, they find an alternative because they physically don't have money or can't even qualify in the housing market to buy anymore. So there's a point where it's too expensive. And even though there's still high demand, that law, that point, that law of diminishing returns point starts dropping off. And what has to happen because of that is prices have to recede and come back to a point where people are able to afford what they want and need again. And because the demand is still there at a certain price level, it will pick back up. But because you're having high appreciation levels, as we saw in that report, for many, many years, since even 2012, where there was a 71% increase, you're seeing that dramatic increase in prices to the point of diminishing law of diminishing returns, that point. And when we have this correction, which I think we're going to have, and I'm starting to see signs of it here even, if you're having someone overpay for this item, housing, at this point, and they're paying 20 to 30% above a list price, which is usually based on a market value, right? The list price is generally based on a market value. You're having that 20 to 30% over that price start to recede. Okay. So if you think about that price coming back 20 to 30%, you're still going to be at that high appreciable value, that high market value. You're just not getting another 20 to 30% on top of that. There's your correction. Now, with interest rates continuing to run up, we might have more of that pullback. We'll see. But based on some of these factors and some of the movement from 2008, and that's just based on information from Case Shiller from 2005 to 2012, I'm seeing that same bell curve happening. And Case Shiller can show that bell curve and that turn, that index is actually turning back down. And it's at the same kind of shape and pinnacle that it was back in 2007 and 2008, and then off a cliff in 2009. I'm not saying we're going off a cliff, but I'm saying a same percentage correction could happen. All right. Hopefully that all makes sense to you. If it doesn't, hit me up in the comments below. Make sure you guys, like I said, if this had any value to you at all, hit that thumbs up on the way out. If you're new to the channel, find the subscribe button, hit it. I got videos for everything: home building, construction, remodeling, DIY, real estate, investing, entrepreneurship, all here on Built by Bailey's. Make sure you guys check out the podcast as well on all audio platforms and right here on the YouTube channel. That's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. And until next time, keep building.